When people hear the phrase sexual peak, let's be honest, people don't think about the research. They don't think about your hormone charts. They don't think about the psychology. They think about the time in their life when you were the horniest. Am I right? That's what people mean by sexual peak. When they wanted it all the time, when they couldn't stop thinking about it, when your body reacted to everything, when the wind blew and it was like, okay, here we are. For men, that's usually when we're younger. Late teens, early 20s, mid 20s. You're thinking about sex constantly. You're jerking off all the time. You see an attractive girl and your brain goes, yep, that's what I want. Even if I can't have it physically, I'll think about it mentally later. You've got the energy. You've got the drive. You recover faster. You want it again 5 minutes later. And when guys hear sexual peak, that's the age that they think of, right? Now, for women, people often imagine the opposite. You hear all the time that women peak later. Now I'm older, I honestly hear this to be more and more true. Now, women tend to say in their late 30s, even 40s. And when people picture that, they don't picture studies. They picture women being more confident, more comfortable, more turned on, getting wet easier, wanting sex more, and actually enjoying it more, not overthinking it as much as they once did. That's the image people have. Men peak young, women peak later. Simple. Except when you actually talk to real people, it's not that simple at all. Some women also do say their best sex was when they were younger. Some say it's now. Some men say they were hornier at 20 but better at 35. Some people feel like their drive has completely dropped. Some people feel like it went up. So the question isn't really what age do men peak and what age do women peak? The real question is, what do we even mean by sexual peak? Is it when you wanted it the most or when it actually felt best? Because those two are not the same thing. And once you realize that, this conversation takes a huge shift. Now, before we go any further, for those of you that don't know me, hi, my name is Chris Hodgson. I'm a former adult performer and professional companion. And as someone who's seen a lot of people at a lot of different ages go through different phases of their sex lives, one thing I can tell you straight away is there's definitely not one age where everyone peaks. But there are patterns. There are reasons certain ages feel different. And there are a lot of things that people blame on getting older that actually have nothing really to do with age. Examples, stress, medications, relationships, confidence, health, hormones, life getting heavier. As you get older, all that can change your sex drive. Sometimes way more than actual age does itself. So instead of just saying men peak here, women peak there, let's talk about what people really mean when they say sexual peak. Because most of the time, they mean the time in their life when they felt the most horny, not necessarily the time when sex felt the best. And those are two very different things. All right, let's start with men. It's true. Most guys feel their strongest drive when they're younger. As I said, late teens, early 20s, mid 20s. Testosterone is high, energy is high. You think about sex constantly. You're ready all the time. Recovery time is quick. You want it again, then straight after again. When people look back, they think, yeah, that must have been my sexual peak. I mean, yeah, I guess. I know looking back with myself, all those things I just stated are absolutely true. But here's the question. Was the sex back then actually better, or was I just hornier? Because most guys had the drive back then, but didn't have the control, didn't have the confidence, didn't have the experience, have the patience. We rushed, we got nervous, overwhelmed, tried too hard. You didn't really know what was going on yet. And trust me, I can vouch that 100% for myself. So hormonally, yes, men often peak a lot earlier, but sexually, not always. And most men realize that later in life. And again, me being later in life, I can vouch for that also. So men, this is for you. Think about this honestly. When did you actually enjoy sex the most? Not when you wanted it the most, but when you actually enjoyed it the most. Was it when you was younger and constantly horny? Or later when you felt more confident, more relaxed, more in control, and you didn't feel like you had anything to prove? And if you could choose, would you take your hormones that you had at 20 and the knowledge you have now and put them together? Most men would say yes. I absolutely would say yes. But then I think a lot of women would be in a lot of trouble if you put those two together at an older age. And honestly, that tells you something. Sexual peak is not just about age. Now, it's different with women because women don't always measure their peak by how horny they were. For a lot of women, sexual peak is the age they enjoyed it the most. And that can be completely different. Some women say early 20s, some say 30s, some say 40s, some say even later. And when you ask why, it's rarely just hormones. It's life, it's stress, it's confidence, it's feeling safe, it's feeling wanted, it's feeling comfortable in your own body. All of that affects desire, sometimes more than biology. Now, some women watching this will absolutely say, no, 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 my best sex was when I was younger. Okay, of course, but then ask yourself why. Was your best sex when you was younger because of your age, or was it your life? Back then, were you less stressed? Did you have less responsibility? Were you less tired? Not on medication yet, not dealing with work all the time, not dealing with kids, not dealing with relationship problems. Because a lot of the times, it's not that your sexuality disappeared, it's that simply your life just got heavier. And for women especially, mental load kills desire, much more than I think age does. But then, you can also see the opposite. A lot of women say their best sex is in their 30s and 40s. Confidence goes up. You now know what you like. You say what you want. You communicate. You stop faking as much. You stop trying to impress. You care less what people think. Hormones shift too. Now, women produce testosterone as well. Not like men, but they do. And when estrogen changes later in life, that balance goes up. And sometimes desire actually goes up with it. Plus, life can be more stable. Kids can be older. Careers can be settled. There can be less chaos, more space in your head. And when the brain relaxes, the body follows. And another thing people forget that is core when it comes to your peak and your drive is medication. You know, antidepressants, they can lower libido. Birth control can change hormones. Anxiety meds can affect arousal. Testosterone therapy, which can increase your sex drive. Stress hormones kill desire. And sometimes people think, well, I think I'm past my peak. When really, it could just be that their chemistry's changed. Their lifestyle's changed. Their relationship changed. Not necessarily their age. Now, here's a perfect question. If you could design your perfect sexual peak, what would you take from being younger? And what would you take from being older? What would it be? The body from your 20s? The confidence from your 40s? The hormones from when you were young? The experience you have now? The freedom you had when you were single, with the connections that you have now? You see, most people don't want to go back. They just want to take the good parts back. Now, the general pattern people talk about is, as I said, men peak hormonally younger. Women often report better sex later. Not always, not everyone, but that's the common knowledge and ground that we all hear, right? And sometimes that difference alone causes problems in relationships because one person's drive is rising while the other's is slowing down. And then they think something is wrong, when really their timing is just different. So after all that, when do men peak and when do women peak? There isn't one age. Your peak is when your body feels good, your mind feels relaxed, your confidence is high, your stress is low, and your life actually lets you enjoy it. So for some people, that's 25. For some, it's 35. For some, it's 45. Others, it's in between. Some people, it's later. And that's normal. And maybe, unfortunately, some of you may never have experienced that at all in your life. But remember, sex isn't just biology. It's timing, it's experience, it's confidence, and it's life. And sometimes the best sex you've ever had isn't when you were the youngest. It's when everything finally lines up. So to sum things up when we talk about sexual peak, I guess, yeah, we're right. The rule of thumb guys peak younger and women peak older. But as we talked about, there's a lot of stuff in the middle that can affect people's different peak times. And I think we all agree if we can take something from when you was younger and apply it to when you're older, I think most people would take that in a heartbeat. You know what I mean? I know I would have the mind and the body and the drive from when I was younger to the wisdom and the words and the knowledge I have now and put them together. And as I said, if men had that, I think ladies, you guys would have a hard time. Anyway, I'm Chris Hodgson. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.